From America to Australia and everywhere in between, we bring you inspiring, informative interviews with accomplished South Asian diaspora spanning every field and walk of life. Welcome to the Desi Buzz Talk Show with your host, Dr. Shabana Parvez. Welcome to the show. My guest today is Manjinder Nagra, joining me from the UK. Manjinder proudly wore the red rose while representing England students at the University of Bath, and Manjinder made history as the first Asian woman to do so. She's over 3 decades of involvement in rugby. She played for her country, for her county, and her club. Manjinder, she remains an impassioned coach, referee, and mentor. She recognized the pivotal role of sports in empowering young girls, and she founded Hove Girls Rugby in 2015, which fosters a nurturing environment across 4 teams. Off the field, she extends her influence to governance. Notably, she serves on the England and Sussex RFU disciplinary panels, where her integrity ensures equitable treatment for all. In addition, Manjinder has established British Asian Women in Rugby, a collective dedicated to celebrating the achievements of Asian women and girls in the sport, while championing the importance of representation. She was also recently honored to receive the Inclusion Award and has become an inductee to the Hall of Fame at the British Asian Rugby Association Awards at the House of Commons. If that wasn't enough, she's actually a practicing solicitor lawyer. Manjinder is a passionate advocate for greater diversity and inclusion in the legal profession. She has served as the first president of color of the Sussex Law Society in its entire history since establishment in 1866. Manjinder is a tireless advocate for diversity and equality, striving to break down barriers and foster inclusivity in the legal profession and beyond. Welcome to our show, Manjinder.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So, let's start at the beginning. You were born into a Punjabi family, and your journey has taken you from the rugby field to the courtroom. Tell us a little bit about first your upbringing, the influence of your family, and how your cultural roots shaped your career path.
Sure, I'd be happy to share that. So my family came to the UK in the 70s from India, and I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, and I was the only one that was born in the UK. And I grew up in a town called Slough. It was quite diverse. It was quite Asian. But there was quite a lot of racism when we were growing up, and there were tensions between the community and the police. And so, we were quite a close-knit family. Instilled in me were the usual ethics that are common, I think, within our culture of hard work and resilience and respecting, particularly your elders. My father was a wrestler and a kabaddi player actually in India. So I think my interest in sport possibly came from him. Don't recall my mum. I don't know of my mum having any sporting involvement, but I suspect in India she probably didn't have those opportunities, sadly. But yeah, there were a few challenges when I was growing up. So my mother was, she was like a chronic asthmatic. So she was signed off sick really for as long as I can remember. I remember her being hospitalized several times when I was young. And then I think, she was signed off long-term sick. And then in secondary school, my father passed away when I was about 13. So, we found ourselves without any parental income, and, the responsibility of navigating that challenge as a family, and the loss of a parent really shaped my outlook. And really, that was, I think, probably didn't realize it at the time, but I think that's, what I really was looking for was financial and personal independence. And also, in our community, rightly or wrongly, but I just felt that there was, a difference between girls were treated and the way boys were treated. And, it would be explained to me that, we were like flowers, we were treasured and we were to be protected. And it's not us that weren't trusted. It's the, outer world that wasn't. And it just didn't sit well with me, though. It just didn't sit well. And, I just, felt like I was being limited, and I needed some answers that I was happy with, and I just wasn't getting them. So, I think ultimately that sort of drove my ambition to be financially independent and carve out a career in law, where I could sort of stand on my own 2 feet. And also, I used to watch this American legal drama, would you believe, called LA Law. I don't know if you...
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
I
So it's
know
really glitzy and glammy, and I thought, well,
it.
I want to be like that, and little did I know, actually, so that's one of the myths to bust in law, that it's very well paid, but certainly isn't in the UK for the majority
Right.
of practitioners. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's a little bit about me.
Okay, great. So through this incredible journey that you've had from being an international rugby player, and then now you have actually become an award-winning commercial lawyer and a non-executive director. So this transition, tell us a little bit about that transition from sports to law and what inspired that shift, or if there was a shift.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a really interesting question. There wasn't actually a shift, I suppose, between the two. They've always been interlinked in my journey, and I think that's probably what makes my journey a little bit unique. Um, you know, I played in a non-professional era. I played rugby at Bath University. Um, I represented England students, and I didn't know at the time, but I became the first Asian woman to play representative English rugby, and wear a red rose. That's our, I don't know what we call it, symbol, emblem, and it was a real honour. And, you know, I'll say till I'm blue in the face that I think without rugby, I probably wouldn't have qualified as a solicitor, because in the 90s, there were, quite a few economic and social barriers, and there still are, I mean, dare I say it, into entering into the legal profession. And, when I finished law school, I went back home to my mum's, and, I wanted to pursue a career. I wanted to pursue my England dream and play for the full senior England squad. But, I went back home. My family were, again, it's not a criticism, but they were like, you need to get a job, you need to get married, you need to have a family, forget this rugby business. Indian girls don't play rugby, So I ended up focusing on trying to get a job. And honestly, I spent the best part of about 2 or 3 years trying uh, to qualify as solicitor. You have to have 2 years training in England. It's called a training contract as a lawyer. So, I sent thousands of applications. And at one point, I even considered like anglicising my name, because I thought, if the hiring manager can't pronounce my name, is my CV going to go straight in the bin? So, I had loads of setbacks, but eventually, it got to a point where I thought, I've got to be realistic, and I had career development loans that needed paying. So I was about to, sack off and give up my dream of being a lawyer. But then this two-partner firm in a small south coast town here, seaside town in Hove, they invited me for an interview. And the first question they asked me was, what's it like to play with a red rose on your chest? And then 45 minutes of an hour interview was just all about rugby. And, so that was my in into law, actually, was the sport and the rugby. And the rugby that my family and everybody around me, not just my community, my family, but it was the whole wider community. Even the rugby world itself was hostile to women playing rugby. So,
Hmm.
that was actually ultimately what got me into the law. So, yeah, in that respect, there wasn't a transition as such. They've always been interconnected in my life. And, both have given me resilience,
Hmm.
pushing on, and, now are giving me a platform, hopefully, to make a difference.
Right. You have like pushed the barriers in both. That's amazing. Become first in both of them. So as you've been with Brighton and Hove City Council as well for more than a decade as a lawyer or solicitor, what has been the most rewarding aspect of working in public procurement and property law?
Well, I mean, in truth, when I first joined the council, I just wanted a better work-life balance. I was an older mum, and I wanted to, yeah, get a work-life balance. So I joined the council thinking, you know perhaps I worked in private practice as a commercial property lawyer, and I wanted a different. So I wanted something different. So little did I know, actually, you still have the same pressures, they're just different pressures. you know um but yeah, I think, and then I made a transition. I made a sideways move from property to contracts and procurement. A secondment opportunity arose, which is quite rare for a lawyer, actually, to change discipline.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, now I do contracts and procurement as well. And it's what I find really rewarding is knowing that the work that I do directly benefits the community that I serve. You know, whether that's granting a lease of a seafront shop, or you know, doing the contract for an all-weather pitch at a school, or doing the recommission of the homeless provision in the city. It's fundamentally, we are serving our community, and it does give you a real sense of purpose, which I never had actually in the early days as a lawyer. I thought law was all about fighting for justice, and and it's not. That's the reality of it. As a practicing lawyer, you've got to pay the bills. You've got to, if you're working for someone, you've got to meet their targets. So, at the council, it is really, fulfilling, and, giving back to the community is something actually that runs quite deep in me. I was brought up a Sikh. One of the key principles of Sikhism is, seva, which is selfless service, and, about giving back. And although I may not be, a devout Sikh, that is something that's always stayed with me, and I think will forever stay with me. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, service is important. Service above self, like we say in
Yeah.
my club as well. Um, so, in your other role, besides the council, as immediate, you were just came off your past president of the Sussex Law Society. During your tenure, were there any key achievements, and what challenges did you face in leading such a prestigious organization?
I mean, the biggest challenge really was taking on the role, dare I say it. I didn't really want to take on a public facing role. I turned it down a couple of times. Um, but I just thought, well, it could be another 20. I've been practicing as a lawyer on the South Coast for 20 years, and I've never seen a person of colour in that role. And I thought, I don't want it to be another 20 years before anyone, gets that opportunity. So I just basically, I thought, well, if I want to see that change, I've got to step up and I've got to be part of it, come out of my comfort
The change
zone.
you want to see. You just
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a seasoned lawyer now, so I'm not too concerned really about what people think about me or anything like that. So, actually I could do that. And, so when I did become president, yes, I was the first person of colour in that role. And it was a proud moment for me. And it was just a reminder, however, of all the progress really that we need to be seeing in these sorts of positions. But yeah, one of my standout moments was I delivered a keynote speech to a group of students at a local university, Chichester University, and there were two young girls there in particular. I remember both of them were Muslim girls. One was wearing a hijab, and they both came up to me and told me that they had unfortunately had some really bad experiences with racism, and then it was at the time where the Israel-Gaza conflict, sort of started, and the girl that was wearing a hijab particularly was getting a lot of awful comments being made to her, and they were about to drop out of university actually. And then the feedback I got was that they heard my story and listened to my journey, which resonated with them, and they basically decided to continue with their education. Thank goodness. And hopefully, someday we'll see them breaking barriers in their field.
right and advocating for others and
And also, my presidency also was like at the peak of, we had some riots here in the summer last year. So that was really difficult, racial riots. People were fearing for their safety. I was the head of an organisation that was targeted. Lawyers were being targeted, or immigration lawyers, and I was an Asian person ahead of that. So of course I was thinking, am I going to be targeted? But that's when you've got to step up and you've got to provide the support. And it sort of, it does underscore the importance of strong leadership and allyship and standing in solidarity, with those that face discrimination. But yeah, I mean, despite all of that, it was an incredible honour, and it gave me a platform, hopefully to inspire others. So despite the challenges, I wouldn't change anything. It was a great honour to serve.
Mhm. I'm pausing for a second. Manjinder, could you maybe, you want your face to be cut off? I don't know if you maybe tip the laptop down a little bit. That's much better. Perfect. I
All
want you
right.
to be more center because your face keeps getting cut out. There we go. That's good. Now we'll continue. Okay. Okay. So you also have been recently named the Company Commercial Lawyer of the Year 2024. What does that recognition mean to you, and how do you balance excellence in your legal careers with all your other roles?
Yeah, I mean that's I mean obviously it's an incredible honour, especially because I was nominated by peers in the Asian community. It was awards that were held by the Society of Asian Lawyers. So I'm obviously deeply grateful for that recognition, and it's a testament to the years of hard work and perseverance, I suppose, and the support of those that have championed me along the way. Um, but balancing my legal career with my other roles, has been challenging. Um, and I've got to be organised. I've learned, and have a good diary system and have a good support system around me. I think is key. Um, but I've got a fantastic husband. I've got a supportive family who encourage me to pursue my passions. And that sort of keeps me grounded, even when I'm particularly busy. And as you said in your opening, I was honoured also to receive some other awards in the rugby field. The Inclusion Award, and I was an inductee of the Hall of Fame at Dr. Ikram Butt's British Asian Rugby Association Awards at the House of Commons. I mean, that was just such a prestigious venue, and it was amazing to be in a room where I wasn't the minority in a rugby environment. But yeah, these awards, they are personal achievements, but they're not just solely that. They are a reflection of the resilience and dedication it takes, I suppose, to break down barriers, even if you don't even realise that you're doing it at the time. Yeah, I hope that that inspires people to believe that success is within their reach too.
Right. Well, and then moving on to the global ambassador for the Sikh Games, and then you're an EDI advisory board member for the students of the RFE, which is the Rugby Football Union, correct?
Yeah.
How do you promote diversity and inclusion in sports and in law?
I mean, I think you've got to just you know you've got to be in the space. You've got to get into this. If you have a platform, and I seem to have one now. 18 months ago I didn't have a platform, or prior to me serving as president of the Sussex Law Society. But that did create a platform for me, and now I've got a responsibility to use that, as do others. And I think we've got to use our platforms to advocate for those that don't have a voice, because in our communities, talent isn't always enough. I often hear, well, if so and so was talented enough, surely they would get to play for whoever, or become this. But actually, no, because there are all these hidden barriers that other people don't experience, and those spaces aren't always accessible to everybody. And yeah, representation matters, and through my sports related roles, I do try and champion opportunities for women and girls, particularly those from marginalised groups. To say that participation isn't limited for them, or if it is limited, we see it, and we will do what we can to try and help, break down those barriers. It's a phenomenal power sport. It has the power to unite communities, and so I want to make spaces where everyone feels like they can thrive and belong. And the same, I think, with law. I try and mentor aspiring solicitors. I try and I speak at events. I try and challenge outdated perceptions of who belongs in the legal profession. And again, I'm a woman of colour in what was traditionally a male-dominated field. So I know how important it is firsthand to see role models who reflect your own experiences. But I know diversity and inclusion is not a priority at the moment, dare I say it, for the leadership in America. But I still think that they are they're important in breaking down barriers so that people have access to the same opportunities, and the recognition and support they deserve. So
That's a good point. Now, you're on the RFU discipline panel. the Rugby Football Union. What are some what's some of the challenging cases or kind of maybe recurrent themes or issues that you've encountered on that, and how would you ensure that you're being fair as you're reviewing that?
Yeah, so I've actually been recently appointed. So I actually haven't heard a case on the England rugby disciplinary panel. That is forthcoming, actually. It's in the diary, unfortunately. But I am on the Sussex disciplinary panel as well. And a recurring theme, unfortunately, is like match official abuse. So against, referees.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real serious issue. We're facing a shortage of referees and in the game. And I think not just particular to rugby, I think, football and soccer, I think, as you call it there. And, it's not a popular place to be a referee because, you're never going to get it right, really. For, one team you'll get it right and for the other team you won't. So, but it can't function without them. And I think it's really important to protect them and, maintain respect for their role. So yeah, so when I sit on a discipline panel, my priority is to treat each individual case with integrity and be impartial and make sure I assess the evidence that's before me and not go in with any preconceived ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So fairness is key really for me, not just for the victim who could be the match official, but also actually for the perpetrator. You've got to be fair to them as well. So yeah, every decision that I make needs to be grounded on the facts, and ensuring that we uphold the values of rugby as well, and making sure that everybody's accountable, you know, and play the game and are involved with the game and respectful to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what with all these roles that you're playing, lawyer, non-executive director, advocate, rugby advocate, player, it is, I'm sure, quite demanding. How do you manage your time and maintain your mental well-being?
Yeah, I often wonder that. I often ask myself that question, to be honest. It's hard. It is hard. But what do? Do you take the easy route, and not take on these roles? Like I said earlier, the presidency, I didn't want to take it on, but I felt a sense of duty to do that, and I'm so glad that I did. And I have got a supportive family, which is fantastic. So, it is something that is, I think, a constant juggle, which you just have to keep, and there'll be times where you're dropping balls, you know.
Yeah.
um,
So, as you said, mentioned earlier, you also use your diary or your planner to really keep on
yeah,
top of.
you've got to have a good diary system. You've got to stay organized. You've got to prioritize. These are all stuff that, you know, this is all stuff as a lawyer, they are basic key skills, and
Right.
they're transferable in your life,
Hmm.
generally. And in
Yeah.
terms of like maintaining my mental well-being, that's really important as well. So I try and make time for my family. I try and stay active. Um, I'm not as active as I would like to be at the moment, but I'm hoping that's going to change.
Hmm.
In fact, I'm just about to set up a new initiative at my local rugby club. So, I did, I was the founder of a girls section for secondary school age girls back in 2016. That's thriving now. But now hopefully I'm about to set up walking rugby,
Oh,
for us mature people still in the game that aren't active and can play, or want to play full contact. But it's
right.
another version of the game, but not contact and walking, which is much more civilized, I think.
Oh, great. So I was actually, that kind of leads into my next question because I was going to ask, as a medical doctor, I was interested in asking you how you maintain your fitness. So is there like, what's your fitness regimen or any tips or tricks that you're using to maintain your physical health and strength so that you can meet the demands of, rugby, your law career, your family obligations? You already talked a little bit about your mental health maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't have the answers to that, I'm afraid. No, I'm not practicing what I would like to tell other people to do. We all know what we need to be doing, taking regular breaks from your screen, making sure you make time for yourself, and when I'm more disciplined than I am currently, shall we say, absolutely, I remember this one woman when I was sort of, juggling lots of stuff, and this one woman was saying, "Man, you've got to make time for yourself," and I felt like, screaming at her and say, how can I? I've got 3 young children, I've got a job, I've got this. And she said, are you telling me you can't make 5 minutes a day just to go for a walk, have a little coffee? And actually, when you strip it back, you know, you can make that time, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and even 5 minutes in itself will be enough. And so, yeah, my New Year's resolution was to start on a fitness regime. That hasn't happened, but I went for a run on Friday, so I'm getting there, and I'm
Right.
hopefully I'll be going for a run tomorrow. So whenever I can, if I get some moments, I live by the sea, I try and go for a
Right.
run,
The sea
and
is very
sometimes,
therapeutic. Just walking by the seaside is great, or walking barefoot on the sand, very therapeutic,
yeah,
very
absolutely.
grounding.
And I was about to say, sometimes I just don't feel like running, so I'll just go for a walk,
Yeah.
get that fresh air. And I'm really lucky that we live, as well as living by the sea, we live by the Sussex Downs, which are sort of a hilly,
Mm-hmm.
um, green spaces. So I can, within a couple of minutes, I'm up there and I can look down on the sea, and it's just,
Yeah.
for me, nature
Therapeutic,
is,
relaxing. Nature is therapeutic.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that does it for me. So even if I can't exercise, I just try and get out into nature, and that really lifts me in those
Mm.
moments.
So is that I think what you mentioned is one of the biggest challenges you faced in your whole career? How do you overcome the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, one of the biggest challenges is sort of juggling, the raising children and striving for that work-life balance. And the thing is, it's ongoing. There are times where you think you've nailed it, and there are times where you haven't. And I think sometimes, sometimes you just need to step back, and stepping back or stepping down isn't a failure. It's just, you need to just sometimes reset and refocus. And actually, that's almost a strength, to
Yeah,
realize, you know, that
when
you
you
need to
step
do
back.
that. You need to sort of, um, yeah, regather yourself,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can then reprioritize. Otherwise, yeah, you just sort of get burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's something that I'm, still navigating. I'm sure people are probably, you know, because social media, as we all know, isn't a real reflection necessarily of people's lives. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
snippet. So I'm sure there may be people, that look at some of the stuff that I post and saying, well, how does she find the time? And the reality is I'm juggling. I'm juggling just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's also, I guess, like you said, about making time, about prioritizing, seeing what you're going to give your time to. And
Yeah,
again, I really like the point you made too about it's not stepping back or stepping down isn't a failure. It is just, it is the actually more mature way of resetting, refocusing, and prioritizing. So then you'll go, get even stronger in what you do choose to do next.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So if you were not a lawyer or rugby player, what do you think you would have done instead?
Um, well, I would have loved to have been a singer or a musician, actually. Um, I, Everyone tells me that I can't sing, but I love singing. I don't do it publicly. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'd love to have been a musician, even a medical doctor, actually. I think the fact that, people like yourselves, in that sort of, that again also is a service, obviously, industry. And,
Hmm. Hmm.
you're genuinely helping people. You're genuinely touching lives, and it doesn't, obviously as a doctor, you know, that's a very varied role in itself, but that is just, I can't think of anything more rewarding, really, to be honest, to know that you could save a life, that you could make a difference. You
Hmm.
know, you might be the first person there when someone's had some sort of life changing thing happen to them, and yeah. So I think one of those three.
Hmm. Great. Those are good options. Um, what about, yeah, I think you mentioned this, is what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day of negotiations, legal work,
Yeah,
meetings?
I mean, I like spending time, with the family, going for a walk on the seafront, on the South Downs.
Hmm.
Um, uh, yeah, and sometimes, even just spending a little bit of time, having a bit of time to myself, really, whether that's, like just sneaking off and having a quick walk.
Right.
As much as I love my family, again,
You need a little bit of you time,
yeah.
even for a short time. Yeah.
How about you? What do you do?
Well, I'm similar to you. I don't get away as much as I would like to. Well, I did run as well. I had joined a running club here. Um, and unfortunately I was not doing as much as I wanted to on that either. It's a weekly run. Um, and I like to um, read or listen to something spiritual, maybe a spiritual lecture or something relaxing. Um, and that's mostly it. Nature is really, really very therapeutic. I
Yeah,
do. So just going out for a little walk or something.
yeah.
I'm gonna admit, I don't do it as much as I should either. So same boat. It is hard. It's hard. You have to try to make it a priority. So
Yeah, it is hard, and yeah, it is hard. Especially, I do have, 3 children, and they
yeah.
have different needs and different after school clubs, and but
Hmm. Yeah.
it really is important, especially the older that we get,
Yeah.
and especially
True.
actually, you know, I don't need to tell you, but obviously in the South Asian community, diabetes is a real
Diabetes.
issue. My
Yes.
mum had diabetes. Um, I had gestational diabetes
Hmm.
myself, and in fact, I was incorrectly diagnosed with diabetes. I've managed to get that reversed, but I'm on that sort of
Oh yes, definitely. And
trajectory.
yeah, and it's really important that, as you mentioned, that in our South Asian community, it's a really important and a big issue. And I'm interested in really diabetes reversal because part of what I do now in my medical clinic is diabetes reversal, disease reversal through the lifestyle change. We're going to be doing an upcoming summit as well on South Asian health, Desi Health Summit coming up soon. So I would love to have you on that too to talk a little bit more about some of these things. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's it's what I mean. I don't know about in America, but I think here it's like one of the top 3, killers.
oh yeah.
So really
Pretty
important for
close.
us.
Yes, yes. Now, Manjinder, you're such an amazing role model for so many aspiring lawyers and athletes. What advice would you give to young people who want to excel both in sports and a professional career?
I would say back yourself. There will be doubts, there will be some hurdles, there will be some challenges along the way,
Hmm.
but it's really important if you have a goal to stay focused, to stay resilient. Um, Try and do your research and foresee what challenges there may be ahead. Um, Surround yourself with your supporters, people that support you, who are going to encourage you. You know, but also, if you do get to the top, I think lift others with you. Together we rise.
Yeah.
It's not just about success, isn't just about personal achievement. It is about helping others. You know,
That,
along in your journey. Now, like I said, I didn't really want the platform that I had, but I have got it now. And actually now, if I can help other people along the way, then that's what I'm going to be doing. I don't want to be a leader sitting on my laurels.
mhm.
Even small changes, are better than that. In the right direction are better than none. I think so. Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, not help others along the way, and not be don't be selfish about your success.
yeah.
Uh, and as part of helping others along the way, you're a non-executive director at the Lioness Coaching Academy. So tell us a little bit about that. How do you see the future of women in sports? What role can the community play in supporting this growth? Tell us a little bit about your role
Yeah,
there.
so the Lioness Coaching Academy actually is a new initiative set up actually, and it's really in its infancy. It actually is my first love, football. So it's a soccer coaching academy,
Hmm.
and it's really in its infancy. And as I say, start with it by a couple of friends of mine. One of them actually is a lioness, so she played football for England, and yeah, I'm sort of with them in an advisory role. I think the future of women's sport is incredibly promising, but there's still quite a lot of work to be done around equal opportunities and representation. Um, you know, there is a growth, we want it now, we can see it. We can see some success in some areas, but it does need support, it needs sponsorship, it needs funding. It needs, we need a social media presence. We need allies. We need, better resources. So that, so other women and girls can see a pathway for them, really, for them to thrive in sport. And the community's role as well. That's vital to this growth. And I think by championing women's sports and creating more inclusive environments and supporting female athletes, both on and off the field, that can foster a culture where women are encouraged to pursue, their passion for sport without barriers. And I think it's also really particularly important to recognise intersectional challenges. So, we know it's hard as a woman in sport and in athletics, but it's even harder, when you look at the intersectionality aspect of it. So, yeah, I think it's about shifting societal perceptions and ensuring women, women's achievements are celebrated as much as their sort of male counterparts. And also, parents need to take responsibility. Be active, because if you're active, the chances are your kids will be active.
Right.
And we need to be role models, I think, for our women and girls. I could, and that will set the tone, I think, for the next generation. I could have stopped with my, my rugby involvement after I stopped playing. But I've continued. I'm a coach at a Sunday, coach the under 8s team. I set up the girls section there, but I also coach the under 8s, minis, mixed rugby. I'm a referee. So I'm visible and I'm there. And although Sussex is not very ethnically diverse, or the area that I live in, and I probably the only Indian rugby player, I think, in my region, still, I'm representing, and if one girl sees that I can do it, then hopefully there'll be more.
Yeah, that is true. That's incredible. So, if what is next? I mean, anything exciting or any upcoming projects or anything that you're working on for 20?
I think really for me it's I think it's sort of balancing I need to just continue that ongoing challenge of like balancing all the various roles that I have, and my personal commitments with my professional ambitions, and to ensure that I can lead and support effectively, and hopefully inspire people in the things I do. So I think possibly less is more for 2025, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
and possibly a bit more of a strategic focus. My aim really, is to, like I say, just use my platform. But with the rugby, for example, I set up British Asian Women in Rugby, which is a collective of us, of women. I thought I was the only one when I set it up, but it turns out, I've got 30 members in my community. So it's about, I want to share their stories, and profile them so that, others can see that, we Asians do play sport and we're good and we want to be seen,
Yeah,
and we deserve to be seen, so.
great. Good luck with that. I think I'm sure, like all your other projects, is going to continue to blossom and, you know, um, succeed, really. So, I'm going to two quick questions for you, like rapid, off the top of your head. Rugby or law? Which one would you choose?
Actually, it would be rugby.
Okay, all right. And then your favorite Punjabi dish or comfort food?
Aloo gobi and roti, without a doubt.
That one is easy, right? Well, oh, thank you so much. We're at the end of our time, but Manjinder, thank you so much. Your journey is so inspiring, and thank you for sharing it with us today, and just showing your dedication. Your dedication to law, to sports, community service. All of it is, and really lifting up others along with you. It's really commendable. So,
Thank you so much. Thank you for
yeah,
having me.
thank you. And for our audience, Manjinder's story is a testament to the power of hard work, resilience, and embracing diverse opportunities. So We give you all a big round of applause for being such an incredible role model, and we're looking forward to seeing what you come with next.
Thank you very much.